Karoline Leavitt, after her totally disjointed press conference yesterday, during which, when asked for evidence for the things she was saying, shot back at CNN's Caitlin Collins and said, Caitlin, you're a reporter. You figure it out. You figure out if there's any evidence. She appeared on Fox News and totally humiliated herself. You would think that by now the Trump administration would have learned you don't send Karoline Leavitt on TV without preparing her to avoid seriously embarrassing herself. And yet here we are again in a segment that I can only describe as painful to watch. Karoline Leavitt tried to spin the latest legal fiascos for this administration, only to end up making the case against Trump's own argument. Listen to what Karoline Leavitt had to say.
And so we have, unfortunately, Sean, a judicial branch that has gotten so out of control. You have single judges in single cities in lower courts trying to determine the way in which the president handles foreign relations. They cannot be allowed to do that. If we live in a country where the will of the American people is subverted by a single judge in a single court, we no longer live in a democracy.
Does she hear herself? Does she understand how what she's saying applies to her administration and to the Supreme Court that has been established by her boss? Because what she is saying sounds an awful lot like an argument against the Supreme Court's conservative supermajority, which has been gutting voting rights, reproductive rights, and democracy itself. But Karoline tells us about how one judge overruling Trump is undemocratic. And meanwhile, Trump is stuffing courts with right-wing extremists in lifetime appointments. And that is completely fine and democratic. But it did not stop there, because subsequently, Karoline Leavitt pivoted to immigration, and she repeated Trump's go-to talking point.
Promises made, promises kept, Sean. President Trump campaigned on securing our homeland, on expelling foreign terrorists and illegal violent criminals from our nation's interior, and that is exactly what he is doing. On February 20th, President Trump signed an executive order designating Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization, because that is what they are.
Now, let me pause just briefly. The use of the Alien Enemies Act has never been done in this context. The countries where these individuals came from and are being deported to are not countries with which the United States is at war. They aren't, in many cases, separate from the Tren de Aragua situation, they are not deporting individuals who have done anything other than be here undocumented, sometimes as a result of paperwork delays and mishaps. And so this entire framing is delusional. But she continues. Take a listen.
Just heard Sarah so eloquently say these are some of the most heinous monsters, criminal gangsters, violent murderers and rapists who have invaded our country under the lawlessness of the previous administration. There is a new sheriff in town now, and he is using every lever of executive authority to secure our country. That's why the president invoked the Alien Enemies Act. He is well within his constitutional and legal and executive authority to do so. And our administration is prepared to fight this battle in court, because we know that this was a whole of government effort. This was a successful counterterrorism operation led by President Trump, the Department of State, the Department of Homeland Security, and now the Department of Justice, who will win this battle in court on behalf of the American people and the innocent, beautiful women who were slaughtered. Their lives were taken too short at the hands of these illegal foreign terrorists. And if the Democrats want to pick this fight, Sean, it's one we will pick all day long, because they are now arguing that the president should have turned around those planes with these foreign terrorists on them. I don't think the American public want these people in our country. That's why.
All right, I'm going to have to stop it. Trump's actual immigration policies are an utterly chaotic mess. Of course, you go back to the first term, the border wall that Mexico was going to pay for never finished. The mass deportations are happening. They're running into legal challenges left and right. They are deporting people who are not the violent criminals they said they were going to be deporting. And then, of course, don't forget the idea of using the military to round up and deport millions of people, because nothing says small government conservative like a police state crackdown on immigrants. And then, of course, ignoring court orders not to deport individuals to El Salvador. Talked about it at the top of the show, a growing constitutional crisis. This is the same press secretary who repeatedly calls the media dishonest while going on TV and humiliating herself with her own words, whether it's war or democracy or immigration. The Trump team's strategy is clear. You say whatever sort of sounds good to a right-wing audience, hope nobody checks, and when you get confronted, you just double down harder. And as usual, reality sometimes catches up to them. The consequences are frequently non-existent, but reality does catch up to them. And we realize that not only is this entire immigration fiasco disjointed, it appears to contain extrajudicial elements. It appears to contain novel legal interpretations of the Alien Enemies Act, which are not justifiable with any jurisprudence or precedent of any kind whatsoever. And their biggest ally in doing all of this is Fox News, right-wing media, people like Sean Hannity, people like Charlie Kirk. There are people who will defend what this administration does no matter what it is. And Karoline Leavitt has quickly become one of the top propagandists and disseminators of the lies of this administration. I have a book coming out. I've spent a long time working on this. I couldn't be more excited to share it with you. It is called The Echo Machine, and it answers a crucial question. How did American politics get so broken? And just as importantly, how do we fight back effectively before it's too late? Trump back in the White House, damage piling up, an administration filled with extremists and loyalists, attacks on democratic institutions, policies hurting working people. If you've felt like you're screaming into the void and watching democracy slip away, my book, The Echo Machine, will help you make sense of what's happening and also give you an idea of what we can do about it. Go to davidpakman.com/echo or find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, Kindle, anywhere books, ebooks, and audiobooks are sold. You can also call any local bookstore and say, I'd like David Pakman's The Echo Machine from Beacon Press. Pre-orders make a huge difference. Please support the book at davidpakman.com/echo.